Welcome to NEXTGames, The Journey of CyberLogic, Episode 5, Time to Get Moving. Now in the previous 4 episodes in this series, we have gotten access to Trust and can summon a total of 3 of them. We have signed up for Unity, we have gotten through Rank 2 of Sandoria, and have completed through Mission 1.4 of Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, unlocking Subjob access. We've also gotten our first job of Red Mage up to level 23. All of that's taken us a little over 6 hours on our playthrough. Episode 5 here will cover about the next 3 hours of your playthrough. We will start with getting our Black Mage Subjob up to level 15. We'll then take on Sandoria Mission 2.1. Next, we will turn our attention to getting some convenience items that will allow you to both warp and gain extra experience, and then I'll show you the way that you're most likely going to get most of your armor and weapons through level 99. Then we will travel to Juno for the first time, get our Chocobo license, our first mount, and a Chocobo Egg to raise our first Chocobo if we choose to do so. Now it's important that we get this mount access very early on in our playthrough, as it will allow safe passage as well as quick travel through most of the world's outdoor maps. So what we're starting with, and what you're seeing here, is the leveling of my first subjob, in this case, Black Mage. Now we started at level 1, and I find it's best to actually kind of pick a notorious monster that you may want to go after in an area that you will be leveling, and therefore it kind of gives you something else to do other than just meaninglessly kill the same mobs over and over again. Well, in this example, I decided, well, I'm near Sandoria, so let's just go ahead and go outside town and try and see if we can spawn and kill Jaggedy-Eared Jack, and of course have the very rare chance of having his necklace drop. So that's where I went with my level 1 Black Mage. Now you'll notice that I'm leveling quite quickly, of course, because my level was starting at level 1, but also keep in mind that your Trust are only the level that they were when you summoned them. They will not automatically level with you. So since I started at level 1 and summoned them at level 1, then now that I'm level 3, they still are at level 1. So after you gain a few levels, it is usually smart to unsummon them and then resummon them so that they will now be, once again, level synced to you. This is really important to remember for those first 20 levels when you can gain levels so quickly. Now, due to the power of Trust at this early stage in the game, they will be doing the majority of your damage, but be sure to get in both weapon swings as well as casting of magic spells if you are a mage user to make sure that those skill ups begin occurring. Now when you're leveling your subjob, you want to make sure that you have your signet up at all times so that you're continually gaining conquest points, as we will need at least 7,000 of those soon to spend on some necessary items. Next, be sure to undertake any ROE objectives that you could be completing while you're killing the mobs in the area you're leveling in, both sparks and unity points, which will not only be a large source of your income at this early stage in the game, but also provide you with lots of the armor that you're going to need and weapons through level 99. Here we are just a few minutes later at level 6 now, and as you can see, Jaggedy-Eared Jack spawned. Now I went ahead and resummoned all of my Trust so that they were level 6 right along with me, because Jaggedy-Eared Jack is a level 9 or 10 notorious monster. Therefore normally he would cut through me as a level 6 Black Mage without much trouble whatsoever, but hopefully with the 4 of us we can actually take him on. I also want to point out that this early stage of the game, the Trust do not have any kind of refresh and have a low amount of magic points, making it so that after usually only a few fights, they are completely out of magic points and are relatively useless in regards to keeping you alive. If you see that occur, the best thing to do is to simply unsummon them and resummon them to give them a full magic pool once again. Make sure you do this right before you take on any notorious monsters, because otherwise you may end up taking one on with having them already depleted their entire magic pool. Now each notorious monster in the game has unique spawn conditions, one of them being sometimes they cannot spawn until a certain amount of time has passed since their last death. In Jaggedy-Eared Jack's case, he will not spawn until an hour has passed after his last death at least. Therefore, after we finish taking out Jack here, we can continue killing other mobs around this zone for experience until that hour window is up, or if it's a particular notorious monster that we're really trying to get, we can always just log off of the game for 1 hour and then return and go back at it. Sadly, no drop from Jack this time. I'm actually finished with my playthrough for this particular day, so I go ahead and log off, knowing that the next time I log in, I can get right back to my experience and possibly get Jack again. Here we are the next day, logging back in and getting back to work at leveling the Black Mage subjob. Now I suggest leveling your first subjob to at least level 15. Therefore, it will be good for you and leveled to the minimum it needs to be through your main job's level 30. Now while we have been killing mobs in the area trying to get Jack to spawn, we have progressed all the way to level 11. Here we are with Jack spawning once again. We'll of course take him out, and then as soon as that's finished, continue on our path to level 15. This right here is a fine example of how much of a difference levels can make. Just a few minutes ago, we were fighting Jaggedy-Eared Jack on level 6, and it took us a good deal of time. However, here we are at level 11, dispatching with Jaggedy-Eared Jack in mere seconds. Now after you've gotten a minimum of level 15 on your subjob, go ahead and head back to town and sell all of the random items you've got to NPCs, as I'm sure you're getting full. And then we'll move on to the next thing we're going to take on, which is Sandoria Mission 2.1. Now before we will be offered this mission, we must trade some crystals to the gate guard here, and then we'll be offered it from the usual mission giver. Now after you undertake the mission, you will discover that we need to travel all the way back to Lethane Plateau. It was this mission that made me remember just how much of my time I spent traveling around the world of Vana'diel before we had things such as mount, home point warps, and book warps. What this translates to is this mission 2.1 ended up taking me 3 to 4 times as long as it should have because I didn't have all of the necessary tools that I normally have available to me later on in the game to help me move through this world much more efficiently. Therefore, if you're watching this guide and following it, I recommend you go ahead and do the things that I recommend later in this video in regards to getting things like your warp ring and mount before you take on mission 2.1 in whatever starting nation you're in, and it should dramatically cut down the amount of time you spend on that mission and all of the following missions. Now before you head out to undertake this mission, make sure you purchase the map of Lethane Plateau and Ordell's Caves, which can be purchased from the usual map NPC for a low amount of gil, as you will need those maps in order to know exactly where you're headed in both of these zones. Now in order to complete this quest, we need to go into this canyon inside of Lethane Plateau in the northwest corner. It is optional to speak to all the NPCs, but they do give you a little more information about the mission you are on. Now you want to make sure that you be careful when you get down into this valley, as the mushrooms you see are going to be aggressive, and depending on your level, they may pose a challenge to you. This seems like a good time to talk about the aggressiveness of enemies you will encounter throughout Vana'diel. Now all mobs in the game are either going to be aggressive or not aggressive. If they are aggressive, they're going to aggro you based upon several things, dependent upon the mob family and where it is you're fighting it. If the mob you're fighting detects based on sound, that means there's a 360-degree circle around that mob, and if you enter anywhere in that circle, he is going to hear you and therefore detect you and attack you. The way you can avoid this is by using Sneak, the spell, or Silent Oil as the item. Now, conversely to this, there are mobs that can detect you based upon sight. This means you have to go within the conal arc within right in front of their eyes in order for them to detect you, and then they will attack. The way you can avoid these types of mobs is by using the Invisible spell or the Prison Powder item. Now, there are 3 other ways that mobs can detect you that you will experience later on in the game. The first is low hit points. This is most commonly experienced when you are near undead enemies. This means if your hit points drop to anywhere in the red or yellow threshold, then the enemy will detect you and attack you based upon that. Also note that later in the game, there are going to be mobs that will aggro you if you cast a spell within range of them or use an ability within range of them, so be ready for that as well. Now I also want to point out that mobs will largely not de-aggro themselves, meaning if you run from them far enough, they won't just stop chasing you. Many of them will chase you all the way until you enter another zone. The best way to avoid this is by to use the spell Deodorizer, which will make your scent masked and them to de-aggro after a period of time. Note, this does not work on all mobs, but if you are trying to de-aggro a mob and not near a zone, this is one of the methods you can try. Now after we finish working our way through this canyon of mushrooms and NPCs, we will finally bring ourselves to the door of Ordell Caves. We want to go ahead and go inside, and the NPC that we are looking for actually is not that far inside of the zone. Just go to this first pool that you see, and then to your left you will see the NPC that you seek hiding behind a rock. After speaking with him, you will learn that one of the NPCs that we were speaking with in Lethane Plateau just outside has his bronze sword that will give him some courage. So we now have to go out there and speak with all those NPCs again and find the one that will give us the bronze sword. Of course, it ends up being the last NPC at the very top of the chasm, but I have the bronze sword, so now all we have to do is return to him within Ordell Caves and give it to him, and then our mission should be complete. We can return all the way back to the gate guard in Sandoria to complete the mission. Now, all in all, because of all the running around I had to do, and because I didn't have things like warp scrolls with me, that mission took me a little over an hour, which is way longer than it should have taken. If I had things like mounts, warp scrolls, and other fast ways to get around, I easily could have accomplished this in half the time, or even a third. Therefore, let's go ahead now and focus on those extra benefits that you can get early in the game that are really going to speed along your playthrough. The first and one of the most important items that we're going to get is the Warp Ring, which you can get for 5,000 conquest points by speaking with the gate guard that you get Signet from. This ring will allow you to warp back to your home point once every 10 minutes, saving you all the time it takes you to get back home. The next item you should grab while you're here is only 1,000 conquest points, and it's an Empress Band. It will give you a 50% experience point bonus when you use one of the 7 charges on this ring. Now, after you use all 7 charges, you will need to spend another 1,000 conquest points for another, but you will easily get that back in the extra experience you are getting while you use those 7 charges. Okay, that'll be it for the items that you should immediately get from this gate guard. Note though that he also offers some very useful scrolls for only about 10 conquest points, such as Re-Raise and Warp. Now the next thing we're going to move on to is storage space. You have undoubtedly noticed, if this is your first playthrough of the game, that those 30 slots that they give you really aren't enough for all of the items that you're going to be accruing during this game. So let's go ahead and talk about what other options we have early on in order to store our weapons, armor, and other things that we collect. Now the first thing we'll talk about here is it's the easiest way to increase your storage space earlier on in the game is by speaking with the Artisan Moogle here, which is in each of the 3 starting nations. He will sell you a Mog Sack, which will be equivalent of size to your inventory, so therefore another 30 slots. He will sell this to you for 10,000 gil, and it will actually grow in size along with your regular inventory to a maximum of holding 80 different items. Now if you're only a few hours into your playthrough as I am here, it's quite possible you won't have 10,000 gil available, especially if you've been spending it on things like spells if you are a mage. Therefore, let me show you a quick way to get large amounts of gil in this game by utilizing some of the points that we have been earning while we've been gaining experience. We will be using the sparks we have been accruing from Roe Objectives in order to earn this gil. You will want to find the ROE NPC in your town. In our instance, it's going to be Rolandine. Go to the level 78 to 99 equipment that she has listed and find the Archeron Shield that you see on page 3. Go ahead and buy a few of these for 2,755 sparks. Then find the nearest NPC that you can sell stuff to and sell these shields to them. Normally you should get between 27 and 28,000 gil for those shields. Well more than you can make at any other point at this stage in the game. I want to caution you not to use all of your sparks, as we're going to be using them for other things here in a few minutes. After you've sold a few shields and gotten over 100,000 gil, now go back to that Artisan Moogle and buy that Mog Sack that we were talking about. Now let's go ahead and just spend a quick minute talking about all the different inventory options in this game and where you can store things. The first thing is your Gobby Bag, which is your standard inventory that starts out at 30, and through quest you can increase to a maximum size of 80. Next is your Mog Safe that you also start the game with. This starts off with 50 accessible slots, and through upgrades and quest, you can increase it again to a maximum of 80. Now, Mog Safe 2 is only accessible in your Mog house and needs to be quested to unlock this. You won't have access to this at this time. Next is storage. This starts out at 0 and increases with the furniture that you keep in your home. So if you have furniture that equals 30 worth of storage spaces in your room, you will have 30 storage spaces available in your storage. Note that like just with MogSafe and MogSafe 2, you can only access storage when in your Mog house, which is the same case with the Mog Locker, which you will actually unlock in a later expansion in the game. Now this will allow you to keep a starting amount of 30 items in your Mog Locker, and then increase that with quest up to the maximum of 80, just like all the other storage locations. The main difference here is you actually have to pay every few days to keep access to this Mog Locker. Therefore, I suggest it's the last place you start putting things. Next, we'll talk about the Mog Satchel, which is based entirely on whether or not you have signed up for two-factor authentication with your Square Enix account. If you have, you get access to this, and it will give you an additional 30 to 80 slots that will mirror how much you have in your inventory. Next, we have your Mog Sack that we just purchased for 10,000 gil. This likewise will mirror the exact same inventory space you have in your Gabi bag, anywhere between 30 to 80. Next is the Mog Case. This is just an automatic free storage that you are given right at the start of the game that gives you 80 immediate storage slots. This is normally the first place I start putting miscellaneous items at the start of the game. Now, additionally, you are given up to 4 Mog wardrobes, and this is where I suggest you keep all of the weapons, armor, and gear that you'll be using for the different jobs that you play. Now, you are given Mog Wardrobe 1 and 2 right at the start of the game, so you'll be able to use all full 80 slots in both of those for a total of 160. Now, if you find with all of those inventory opportunities you're still full, you can get Mog Wardrobe 3 and 4, each costing you an extra $2 a month for a total of an extra 160 slots between the two of them. Now I know it sounds like all of these slots here are going to be more than enough for all the items you'd earn in this game, but it's really not that difficult to fill all of these slots, especially if playing multiple jobs. The next thing I'd like to talk about is gearing for levels 1 through 99 in Final Fantasy XI. Now, up until this point, as you can see and as I've been speaking of, I've simply geared myself with the items that I've found in the brown chest while I've been gaining experience. That's worked up until this point, but right around the level of 20 to 25, you really should change to some more solid gear sets, especially ones that involve more defense. Now, the best place I suggest you get this from is Rolandine, or whatever Unity NPC is in your starting city. We're once again going to be using those sparks, which is why I suggested you keep a few of them. Now thankfully all of this starting gear is quite inexpensive. You see me going through it right here, and I can end up getting a full trader's armor set for my particular character for only 70 sparks per piece. You can also get up-to-date weapons here. Therefore, I suggest you return to this Unity NPC every few levels to see what new weapons and armor you can equip, and go ahead and buy those as the cost is very minimal. Also remember that you can only spend a total of 100,000 sparks on items throughout the course of a week. So if you happen to be getting a lot of sparks and used all 100,000 of them to buy some shields as I discussed earlier, now you will have a lot of gil, usually around 1 million gil for a full 100,000 worth of shields. However, you will be unable to purchase any other weapons or armor from the Unity NPC until the week resets. And just so everyone knows, that happens every Sunday at midnight Japanese time. Currently, that's about 10 a.m. Central Time here in the United States. Now that we have some convenience items, our inventory sorted, and some fresh weapons and armor, let's go ahead and work on getting our mount so that we can get throughout the world of Enedil much quicker. Now back in the day, your first trip to Juneau would be fraught with danger, especially at a lower level. It could take upwards of an hour and require several attempts, as mobs along the way are quite aggressive and can attack and finish you off quite easily. However, these days we have a much easier option. Simply use the Unity Warp to Batilla Downs to appear right outside of Juneau and enter where we need to be to get our mount quest underway. Now once you are in Upper Juneau, you just want to head straight through to the Chocobo stables, which are down these stairs here, and speak with the NPC underneath the awning called Brutus. This will start your Chocobo licensing quest that you will need to do before we start the mount quest. Now the first quest that Brutus will give you is Chocobo on the Loose, which, if completed, will reward you with a Chocobo Egg. In order to complete this quest, you simply need to first speak with him in Upper Juneau, then go to Lethane Plateau and check the Chocobo tracks in the northwest corner of E5. You then need to return to Brutus in Upper Juno, and then head to southern Sandoria and speak with Hanatalion. Here, you are given 3 choices to select. Doesn't matter which one you pick, as all 3 choices are wrong. After you've selected all 3 wrong choices, a new choice will arrive saying, bring the Chocobos together. Once you do this, you will be able to complete the quest by returning to Brutus in Upper Juno, and he will reward you with a Chocobo Egg. We will go ahead and talk about what to do with this later on in this video. You now need to talk to Brutus 3 more times. On the 2nd time, you will need to select the option of I sure do, and on the 3rd time, nope, never. Once you do that, you will progress in the quest called Chocobo's Wounds, and you will now need 4 Gosbit grasses that can be easily farmed in a few locations around the world that drop off flies and bunnies, but you can also simply just go to the auction house that's right next to here and buy 4 of them to speed along your progress. You then need to trade these Gosbits to the Chocobo you see right in front of me here, one at a time with 45 real-life seconds in between each trade. He will outright deny the first 2 attempts, and then start taking the Gosbit grass from you on the 3rd attempt, and after you've traded him all 4 for a total of 6 attempts of trading him the grass, he will then be your friend, and you will be rewarded with a Chocobo license, which allows you to call him out in the world. However, this Chocobo is not what we'll be using to quickly get around Vanadil. For that, we need mounts, so let's move on to that quest next. Now, to complete the mount quest, simply speak with Mapetoto, sitting right here next to Brutus inside of the Chocobo stables. He will send you on a quest to feed his raptor all around Batilia Downs. Now, this is kind of a mini game of sorts that can be challenging if you don't know exactly where it is you're headed. So let's go over what it is you'll need to do during this run in order to successfully earn this raptor mount. It's important to note that if you've not purchased the map of Juno yet, that you will be unable to complete this quest, as Mapetoto must mark up your map in order to show you where all the food is in Batilia Downs. You can purchase this map from the usual map NPCs in your starting towns. Now, once you have the map, go ahead and undergo the quest, and you will be sent out to Batilia Downs, where you will be shown several different locations, 8 total, in which there are food spots to feed your raptor. Now, you only need to hit 5 of these 8 spots, and then get to the ending NPC in order to successfully complete this quest. Now, as the quest goes on, your raptor is going to get more and more tired in between his feedings. Therefore, you can use the cheer command in order to spur him on and try and get him to that next food item, but really, if you waste any time in between them, you're not going to be able to finish this run. I've gone ahead and shown what I feel is the ideal path to complete this right here. If you follow this exact path, you should be able to complete this quest on your first attempt. Note that if you're having difficulty with this minigame, after failing it, it will give you the option to lessen the difficulty, which will give you more time between the different feeding dens. Now, as I'm running around with my raptor here, getting all these different food items, I have a few minutes to talk about 2 other things that I wanted to mention during this video. The first is, up until now, we've been getting all of our spells through our starting nation. This will give us access to some of our spells at an inexpensive price, but there are lots of spells in the game that you can get from other NPCs. If you are a mage user, then you should be able to find some scrolls that you have not found yet in Selbina at the NPCs in between the 2 main buildings. The other thing I wanted to mention is that at this point in the game, we're going to start exploring lots of the world of Vanadil, and therefore we're going to need maps. I suggest going to that starting map NPC that I've mentioned in the starting cities, and buy all of the maps that are 600 gil and less, as you will more than likely need access to all of those in the very near future. We are almost done with our feeding journey, but let's go ahead and take one more minute to talk about the Chocobo Egg that we got just a minute ago. Now, that egg will allow you to raise your own Chocobo, and if you choose, race them against other Chocobos in the Chocobo races. Now, in order to do this, you need to bring that egg to one of the starting 3 nations and trade it to the Chocobo trainer that is in one of the stables. That trainer will then watch after that egg for you as you hopefully come back to it each day and watch on its progress. Now, this is not a necessary part of Final Fantasy XI. It used to be more entertaining when the Chocobo was something that you actually used to travel throughout the world, but it really no longer is, as we use these mounts as you're seeing now. However, if you do want to take part in this aspect of Final Fantasy XI, I will show you right at the end of this video the NPC that you end up trading it to, and then show you brief glimpses into the progress of our Chocobo as he progresses over the next 30 days. And here we are getting that final piece of food on our Raptor run. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that I needed to use the cheer effect a few times during this run to buy myself some extra time before getting to that food spot underneath these different mounts. Now once we finish getting all the food, we simply run to the NPC that is at a nearby location. She will be nice enough to reward us with a warp all the way back to Upper Juno, where we just simply need to speak with Mappy Toto one more time, and he will reward us with the ability to call this Raptor Companion anywhere in the world. I also want to point out that you will not always need to use the Raptor as your mount. It is the initial one that you earn, but there are a variety of other mounts in the world of Vana'diel, all traveling at the exact same speed. Therefore, as you earn different mounts through your playthrough, go ahead and just start using the ones that work best for the jobs or styles that you are playing. There's that final NPC I was speaking about. She'll go ahead and warp us back to Juno and allow us to finish the mount quest. At this stage, we are roughly 9 hours into our playthrough. That's going to be it for episode 5 of The Journey of CyberLogic. I hope you're finding this helpful. We are now well equipped to quickly travel throughout the world of Vana'diel. Therefore, in our next episode, we'll be getting back to our Sandoria missions, rank 2, as well as the next few missions in Rhapsodies of Vana'diel. As promised, I'll go ahead and leave you with the trading of the Chocobo Egg to the trainer to start that progression. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy out there.